So after our meditation last week, um, one of the participants got hold of me and asked this kind of really actually good question around how come I refer to that which is yang as divine and that which is yin, or kind of something like the sacred feminine, as imperfect. And surely there's the sacred feminine is not imperfect. And I think that what's really important to recognize, and that perhaps it was an assumption of mine that this would be understood by people, and of course it's kind of not held within our collective consciousness, this thought at all, is that the imperfection holds its own perfection, its own divinity. And so there's the divinity of the purity of the light. So we move upwards away from all that is separate, all that is challenging, towards this idea of God as an external figure, very much like a monotheistic interpretation of God, where God is a being who sits outside of the earthly realm. And that is a yang sense of God, and that God is perfect. And then the yin sense of God, the same quality of divinity as wholesome and as full and as divine and as sacred as that yin sense, yang sense of God, is the yin sense of God, which is pantheistic, which is like, earth religions are based on that, where there's a recognition that God resides as essence within everything that is. And so if we're looking at what is divine or not divine in our world, in the yang axis, or in both of them actually, there's a sense of expansion into oneness consciousness, into God. And then there's also a quality of contraction down into this little separate self. And in the contraction is the movement away from divinity. So I can be divine in my sacred feminine experience of being connected and whole and part of all that is this unfolding of life as I experience it. And then there's also the oneness consciousness, the sacred experience of the bliss, the union with something that is other than this physical experience on earth. They're kind of more like a sort of a rapture, in a sense of not recognizing that it is in this body, and it's I guess perhaps more closely related to a mystical kind of sense of yearning and moving away from this everyday experience. And they are equally powerful when they are expanded, and then when they are contracted, the yang contraction moves into a sense of tyranny, misuse of power, rape, murder, killing, that kind of active process of reaction to what is happening in life. And in the yin sense of contraction, there's a movement towards being the victim, being helpless, being powerless, and also trying desperately to find a place of power in a manipulative kind of way, because it's the only possibility. There's no possibility to be powerful in an active way. So there's this sort of secret kind of trying to create power from a place of disempowerment, and that manipulation is can be very powerful, very strong. I mean, if you think of somebody like an old lady who is bedridden, she has ostensibly no power whatsoever. She's very weak, and yet she can require that everybody runs in circles around her all the time because, poor me, I'm the victim, I need looking after, and if you don't help me, what will happen to me, etc., etc. That's a yin kind of contraction and misuse, or a sense of moving away from the sacred. So as we contract away from the sacred. As we expand into these, into our own divinity. And the divinity, when we expand far enough, it actually brings the yang axis and the yin axis together. And then there's an integration, actually. And integration also comes into play. It means it means kind of untouched. In is un, and tangia is to touch. Untouched because it is it's just this sense of kind of an innocence, I guess. And it's the wholeness, the bringing back together, the remembering, the standing true. And so the integration brings the clarity, the authenticity, the truthfulness of the yang axis, and the love, healing, embracing, holding, accepting, non-judgmental quality of the yin axis of the sacred feminine together into a fullness and wholeness where we become complete, where we come home to ourselves.